What if one of the most powerful Jedi in history had never existed? No purple lightsaber, no stern voice in the council chamber, no man daring enough to stand against a Sith Lord with nothing but conviction and arrogance in equal measure. What if Mace Windu simply wasn't there? The Jedi Order would have been very different without him. No iron-fisted authority holding everyone to the code, no skeptical glare aimed at Anakin every time he walked into a room. Without Mace, the Jedi might have been freer, kinder, maybe even wiser. But would they have been strong enough to survive what was coming? Because for all his flaws, and there were many, Mace Windu was the Jedi's shield and its sword. He kept their structure intact even as it cracked from within. Without him, the Council might have dissolved under its own debates long before Palpatine ever showed his true face. Sometimes the person holding things together is also the one tearing them apart. It's easy to imagine a brighter galaxy without Mace. The Republic uncorrupted, Anakin unbroken, the Jedi more compassionate. But the Force doesn't work that way. Every action ripples, every absence echoes, and sometimes removing one flawed man means removing the lesson that flaw was meant to teach. Because whether we like it or not, Mace Windu was balance in motion. Not perfect, not pure, but necessary. Without him, the galaxy might have had peace, but not understanding. In this video, we'll explore what Star Wars might have looked like if Mace Windu never existed, how his presence defined the Jedi's rise and fall, and what the galaxy would truly gain and lose without its most powerful contradiction. Let's start by imagining a galaxy without Mace Windu. No purple lightsaber, no intimidating glare, no voice of authority dominating the Jedi Council chambers. Without Mace, the Jedi Order would have lost one of its most uncompromising enforcers, a man who believed the code was absolute and the Jedi were the rightful moral center of the galaxy. But what happens when you remove that kind of personality from history? The ripple effect is bigger than most people realize. Without Mace Windu, the Jedi Council would have looked a lot less rigid and a lot more flexible. His influence was one of the key reasons the Order clung so tightly to its dogma. He didn't just interpret the Jedi Code, he enforced it with the precision of a lawyer and the passion of a zealot. With him gone, figures like Yoda or even Ki-Adi-Mundi might have allowed more freedom for individuality within the Order. And that could have changed everything for the Chosen One. Because Anakin Skywalker's fall wasn't born in one moment, it was built over years of mistrust and tension with the Council. And who was the face of that mistrust? Mace Windu, the man who never trusted him, who never believed in him, and who constantly reminded him that he wasn't ready. Without Mace there to question his loyalty or block his promotions, Anakin might have actually felt like he belonged. That sense of belonging could have made the difference between light and dark. Think about it. Anakin's frustration peaked when he was denied the rank of Master. That moment wasn't just about pride, it was about validation. If Mace had never existed, that conflict wouldn't have happened. A different council might have promoted Anakin, or at least guided him with empathy instead of suspicion. No rejection, no resentment, no desperate alliance with Palpatine. The fall of the Chosen One might never have happened at all. And if Anakin never fell, then the Republic might never have become the Empire. Palpatine's manipulation relied on Jedi arrogance and division. Mace was one of the loudest voices feeding both. Every time he dismissed Anakin or challenged Palpatine's authority, he made himself a target for the Sith Lord's careful schemes. Without Mace's constant power plays, Palpatine might have had a much harder time pitting the Jedi against themselves. But let's not pretend the galaxy would have been all sunshine and peace. Because while Mace Windu was arrogant, he was also one of the few Jedi willing to take real action. He was decisive when others hesitated, brutal when others debated. Without him, the Jedi might have drifted further into inaction, letting corruption and war spread unchecked. The Republic's rot might have deepened long before Palpatine even came to power. And then there's Count Dooku. Mace was one of the last straws that pushed Dooku away from the Jedi Order. The two disagreed constantly over how to handle political corruption. If Mace had never been there to challenge him, Dooku might have stayed within the Order. The Sith might have remained hidden, or at least delayed their rise by decades. Ironically, the absence of Mace could have meant fewer wars and more peace, at least for a while. But that version of peace might have been temporary. Because as rigid as Mace was, his strength kept the Order grounded in times of chaos. He was the hammer that stopped cracks from spreading, even if he made a few of his own. Take him away, and the Jedi Council starts looking more like a debating club than a leadership council. That kind of uncertainty could have been just as dangerous as arrogance. Mace Windu's absence wouldn't just change the Jedi, it would rewrite the Clone Wars from the ground up. Mace was a general, a strategist, and one of the few Jedi with the authority to keep the Republic military under control. Without him, the entire command structure might have unraveled. The Jedi would have struggled to unite under leadership, especially when Palpatine began manipulating them into soldiers instead of peacekeepers. Remember, Mace was one of the only Jedi who actually understood the scale of the war. He knew it wasn't about victory, it was about survival. His tactical mind kept countless planets from falling under separatist control. Without him, the Republic might have lost major battles early on. Ryloth, Dantooine, even Coruscant itself. Mace wasn't always right, but he was consistent, and consistency is what kept the Republic from crumbling too soon. Still, his death, or in this case, his non-existence, would have shifted the war's emotional core too, because Mace represented the dark side of Jedi leadership, the part that sacrificed morality for control. Without him, someone else would have stepped into that role, but probably with less intensity. Maybe Obi-Wan or even Yoda would have been forced to adopt Mace's ruthless decisiveness, and that could have warped them in ways we can't even predict. But the biggest shift would be in Palpatine's rise to absolute power. Mace Windu was one of the few Jedi who openly challenged the Chancellor's control of the Republic. He questioned his motives, doubted his authority, and ultimately confronted him head-on. Without Mace to play that role, Palpatine's plan might have gone completely unchallenged until it was far too late. The Jedi might never have discovered he was a Sith at all. And if Palpatine never revealed himself, then Order 66 might not have been necessary. The Jedi would have simply faded into complacency, unknowingly serving a Sith Lord for decades. Imagine that, the Jedi unknowingly enforcing a Sith empire under the guise of peace. Mace's death was dramatic, but his existence at least forced Palpatine to play his hand. Without that confrontation, the galaxy might have fallen to darkness silently, with no one left to even notice. It's also worth noting how much Mace's absence would have changed the next generation of Jedi. Without his example, both good and bad, young Jedi like Anakin, Ahsoka, and even Khan and Jarrus would have grown up in a very different environment. The lessons they learned about arrogance, power, and authority all stem from figures like Mace Windu. Remove him, and the Jedi might have raised a generation of naive idealists with no sense of the galaxy's brutality. That sounds peaceful in theory, but peace without awareness is just denial. Mace Windu was living proof that the galaxy needed realism as much as idealism. His cynicism balanced out Yoda's faith and Obi-Wan's diplomacy. Without that anchor, the Jedi might have become dreamers in a galaxy that rewards only pragmatists. And let's not forget the clones themselves. Mace was one of the few Jedi who saw them as both soldiers and tools. A harsh truth, but one that defined the Republic's entire war machine. Without him, the Jedi might have treated the clones as equals, but also might have hesitated when hard choices needed to be made. That hesitation could have cost billions of lives. Now here's where it gets complicated. Because while removing Mace Windu might fix some things, it also erases one of the few characters who actually grew during the Clone Wars era, even if it was subtle. Underneath all that arrogance, Mace was one of the few Jedi who genuinely tried to reconcile their ideals with the galaxy's chaos. His rigid morality wasn't about vanity, it was about survival in a universe that rewarded corruption. Take the Battle of Ryloth, or his negotiations with Cham Syndulla. Those moments showed a rare glimpse of a Jedi who actually understood compromise. He didn't always like it, but he knew that idealism alone couldn't win wars. Without him, that pragmatic streak in the Jedi vanishes completely. You're left with philosophers debating in a temple while the galaxy burns outside their window. And then there's the irony that without Mace, Anakin might never have learned the cost of unchecked power. Their conflict wasn't just personal, it was philosophical. Mace represented order, Anakin represented emotion. The two needed each other to define themselves. Remove one, and the other loses his mirror. Without Mace, Anakin's fall might not have been as emotional, but it also might not have been as meaningful. If Mace Windu never existed, the Jedi might have survived longer, but they might have lost their purpose entirely. Because the truth is, Mace wasn't wrong about everything. His arrogance blinded him, yes, but his caution saved lives. His distrust of Anakin was unfair, but it wasn't baseless. He saw what others refused to see, and he was right about how dangerous unchecked emotion could become. So while it's easy to imagine a galaxy where things went better without Mace Windu, it's equally easy to imagine one where they went much, much worse. Where the Jedi became soft, the Sith grew bolder, and the Republic collapsed under the weight of its own peace. Because peace without vigilance isn't peace, it's preparation for defeat. Mace Windu was far from perfect, but he was necessary. He was the Jedi's reality check, their inconvenient truth, the reminder that morality without strength is just weakness in disguise. Take him out of history, and you remove the galaxy's moral compass, even if it was cracked and rusty. In the end, Mace Windu's existence wasn't about perfection. It was about contrast. The galaxy needed someone who could embody both the light and its shadow, without completely falling into either. His presence created conflict, but that conflict shaped heroes. Without him, Star Wars loses one of its most important lessons, that greatness doesn't come from purity. It comes from struggle. And maybe that's the point. The galaxy might have gained peace without him, but it would have lost its reflection. Because sometimes the heroes who make the worst mistakes are the ones who teach the hardest truths. Mace Windu didn't just change history by living, he changed it by being impossible to ignore. And that's a legacy even the Force can't erase.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.